Okay, so now we can move on to task 2. And task 2 is a nice simple task, ordering additional items. Extend task 1 to allow a customer to choose whether to purchase any items from the other categories. If so, which items? Then we're updating the price, and then we're storing the and then outputting the additional items. So it is literally just extending task 1. And as you can see, the extra items, what it means is, do they want a solid state drive? Do they want a second hard disk drive? Do they want an optical drive? Do they want an operating system? So I was contemplating about this actually, because they've got solid state drive there. And I'm kind of a bit unsure as to whether or not, or how that fits in, because obviously if you've looked on like PC World or whatever sort of computer shop that you know, Amazon or whatever, you can actually buy computers with a solid state drive and a main hard drive, or you can get computers with just a solid state drive, and sometimes that is a second hard disk drive. So I'm a little bit unsure what to do. So what I've done, and sometimes they do leave things a bit ambiguous in these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that the solid state drive is an additional item for task 2 only. Because in task 1 it does actually just say one main hard disk drive, doesn't mention anything else. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to have solid state drive, second hard disk drive, optical drive and operating system as the 4 additional items that you can purchase. So if you think about this, it's actually quite simple. We're just going to kind of do what we did for the previous task 1, where we're going to let them enter what they want. But this time what we're going to do is, if you think about it, they might want more than one thing. So they might want all 4, they might just want 1 out of the 4, they might want 0 of the 4. So that means because we've got that choice of having more than one, we're definitely going to have to put a loop in. And actually, really, thinking about the way that the pre-release tasks are done, they always have some kind of loop. There's always some kind of data entry, there's always some kind of array that we're setting up, there's always some kind of loop that we need to put in there. So so basically task 2 is going to be a loop that lets the user enter as many of the additional items as they want. And it's actually going to be quite simple because we can do that in one sort of block of code, very similar to what we did in task 1. So let's have a look at the code. Here's the code and from the previous video, and you can see here we've got, what we did, we're selecting those different items and then we're printing out the price. So actually what we can do is down here at the end of the code, we're going to add our loop here. So the algorithm is going to be, we're going to add a loop to allow the user to select as many items as they want, so select or up to 4 different additional items. Okay, and so that will be our loop, and it will, if you remember the way that we do loops, we've got a while loop in Python and we've got a for loop in Python. We've used a for loop. For loops are great when we're using them with arrays, and they're great when we know exactly how many items or how many times we're going to loop. Now we could be looping 0 times, we could be looping 1 time, 2 times, 3 times or 4 times. So we don't really know how many times we're going to be looping. Well, actually, technically you could have more than one of these things. So actually, although I've said we're not going to be looping more than 4 times, actually, realistically, if you're buying a desktop computer, you could have more than one optical drive. You could have multiple hard disks, and in fact, you could have as many hard disks as you want. So actually, we don't know how many times we're going to loop, so we'll use a while loop, because while loops are best when we don't know how many times we're going to loop. So it's going to be a while loop, so I'll just put that there. And then all we're going to do is just say, select something that you want. If you want to add it to your computer, and it will add it to the order and the order price, and then, do something like -1 to quit or something like that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a while loop, and with a while loop, we're going to have some kind of loop controller. So I'm going to call it run, and that's going to be set to true. And then I'm going to say while run is equal to true. And then we're going to ask the user to select additional items. But actually what we need to do is we need to print those additional items as well. So there's a little bit more that we might need to do, but we'll just say, please select or do you, we won't ask them to do it, we'll just assume that they'll just put -1 if they don't want one. So I'll just put additional items. So if you're typing this along with me, you might want to just pause until carry on and watch until I've finished and I'm happy with what I've got. And then we need to print everything out from, we're printing like we did before with this code up here. Here we are. So we're printing, but this time we're printing all of the additional items. So I'm just going to add a few asterisks there just to make it look a bit more standout-y. That's technical, standout-y. So we're not doing 0 to 2. We're going to do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 8 to 16. Might be 8 to 17 actually. Let's try that and see. So we'll do 8 to 17 and print out everything else. So let's try that out first of all. So let's run module and I've got an unexpected, oh yes, look, there we are. So I've need to indent that. So that's the reason I've got an error for that, is I need to indent that print there. So there we go. So that should fix it. There we go. So let's just select. Unfortunately, we have to keep going through the previous code, but luckily it's not too complicated. Good. And you can see there. You can see there it's looping around. It is actually doing it, but it's got itself into a infinite loop because our run is not equal to false. But we can see there, if I just do a Control-C or to quit out, it is actually printing out those additional items. We don't have to worry about this bug because what we're going to do is we're just going to add an input in a moment, so that's fine. So we don't have to worry about the fact that this is an infinite loop. Okay, so let's ask the user what they want, and we'll say print, please enter the code for an additional item -1 to stop adding. Okay, and then we need our input, so I'm going to call it add item and then equals input and then just a prompt, and then that should be it. Okay, so let's just double check that. I like to, as you know, I quite like to check everything as we go along, and I'm just going to try and adjust this because we can't see it properly. So hold on one sec. Okay, I've adjusted that now. Good, so you can see that. So I'll just put A1, B1, C1. There we go. So it's printed out as before all the items that we've ordered, and then it's printing out all of the extra items, the solid state drives, then the second hard disk drives, optical drive, operating system. Please enter the code for an additional item. So we could just add like D1 or something like that, and then it's looped around again. Okay, so that's, I'm happy with that so far. So what do we need to do next? We need to see what they've selected and then add that to the order. So all we need to do is do exactly what we did before for task 1. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to, we'll have to adjust the names of the variables. So I'm just going to take that, that code there, and from main HDD, and that should be fine. And we're just going to amend it, indented underneath that add item. So everything needs to be indented. And we're going to say, oh, actually, we don't need that input. So just remove that. You can always just pause the video and then just add this after I've finished. So I'm going to call it add item index, and we're going to find add item index, add item, finding what it is, and then we're going to add here, we don't want to say main hard drive, we could say additional item, and then add item index over here, and then the order price, add item index. Now what we could do is I'm just going to print that out. I'm going to print out, this is just debug, print out order and print out order price just to check that it's added it all okay, and then we'll do, once we know it's worked, we can just leave that. Okay, so I'm going to run this, we can take it out, I mean. So let's run this and we'll just select a couple of items. There we go. Okay, so please enter an additional item, -1 to stop. So let's add D1 solid state drive. Oh, and it hasn't printed out. That's interesting. So it's looped around again and it hasn't, oh, look at that. The reason why it hasn't printed it out is because I've unindented those prints. You probably spotted that before I did. So I'm just going to tab those in so that it's in the while loop, because previously they weren't, if they were indented, they weren't in the while loop. So let's run that again and it should work this time. It's live coding for you. B2, C3, additional items, let's add D1. There we go. So, and we can see in our printout of the arrays, it should be $59.99 for the solid state drive, and it is, it's added it on there, additional item, 240 gigabyte solid state drive, $59.99. Excellent, I'm really happy with that. Now, so that means that it's adding everything, but it's not quitting out. So if I enter -1, we've got an error because it can't find that in the array. So actually what we need to do is we just need to add in a little if statement here and say if, so on where we're getting the input, we say if add item is equal to -1 in quotes, it's got to be in quotes because it's a string, not a number, then we're going to quit out. So we say run equals false, and then we need to also put a break in, okay? But we need to put an else in, else, and then tab that forward. So just take a look at that for a moment, pause it there and make sure your code is the same. But basically what we're doing is just saying if they enter -1, we're just going to quit out. They've finished adding additional items, and so fingers crossed that should work. Let's just test that. So we've got A1, B1, C1, and then we're going to add an additional item, D1, and then I'm going to do -1 to quit, and that has quit out. Good, I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's just double check what else do we need to do for task 2. I think we've done most of it now. We've allowed the customer to choose whether to purchase additional items, update the price of the computer, which we've done, store and output additional items and the new price. So that's the last thing we need to do. Now we've got the code for that already, just printing it all out, and we've got that here. And we need to print everything out as well. So here's our code, and I'll just use the sum this time. I'm not going to add the for loop. So I'm just going to put that here. It's the same code, printing out the order price, and then that's it. And obviously this, I'll run it now, but we might need to just change some of the way that this prints everything out, maybe some extra sort of padding of blank spaces and things like that. But we can add that afterwards. The main thing is just to get the code and the basic code there all sorted. So I'll just add an additional item. I might add, actually I'm just going to add G2. I just want to double check that, yeah, that should be okay. -1, there we go. So we've got our additional item. Good, I'm happy with that, good. Yeah, that's task 2, nice and easy.